What's happening, MMA fans, fight fans? Ryan Thomas back again for another episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. You're tuning in, of course, live on the Buffalo Fanbase Podcast Network, which is all over the place, whether it's X, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Facebook. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in each and every time I hop on behind the mic. And, of course, it's great to have another awesome guest with me on the podcast. Back again, Kevin Carrier, Legacy Fighting Alliance lightweight, who is getting the chance to finish what he started with a rescheduled bout from LFA 202 to LFA 204. Kevin, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast for me.
My pleasure, brother. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So, as I mentioned from the top, this was a fight you were ready for. This was a fight that you prepared for. LFA 202 in Seneca Niagara Resort and Casino, Niagara Falls. You got the whole entourage in waiting, ready for you to fight. And then how soon was it prior, or how close to your fight was it that you had heard that Kyle Pufall had pulled out?
Yeah, so check-ins at the for the venue was 5:30 p.m. All systems were a go until about 3:30 p.m. I'm not gonna lie, he looked a little worse for wear on weigh-in day and everything. He had a hard time making weight, and I could tell. He didn't look like his full self. I'd never met the kid before, but I could tell he was impaired for sure. But it was more of a waiting game than anything. Like, didn't think he was gonna pull, but I was like, okay, this guy definitely is having a hard time. I didn't. Camp was flawless. The cut was flawless. Everything was just 100% going according to plan. And I was in the hotel. I was actually watching Heat with De Niro and Pacino. I was getting in the mindset. And all of a sudden, my wife gets the call, he's out. And rush of emotions,
Right, right.
You try to be as professional about it as you can be, I'm a team leader, coach now. And, I try to, really bestow that upon the next generation, that you just got to kind of ride the wave. And, of course I was upset at first, but at the same time, I know there's always something happening, for a greater purpose. So I try to keep that mindset and really lead by example with that. So I was just rolling with the punches.
Sure, and of course that is what you got to do in the octagon. Roll with the punches, and outside of the octagon, roll with the punches too. It's a side of the fight game that does not get talked about enough. The flexibility that fighters have to have, the highs and lows, all that hard work, and then you get told that you kind of got to do it a little bit more. You got to go back to the drawing board. What has that experience been like for you? Obviously, it's something that I think fighters are accustomed to in this space. They're aware that this can happen, that these things happen. Could have happened to you at some point down the road of your journey too. But what was that like, getting back in the gym to kind of restart the tail end of your camp? Because this was what a few weeks back now, so it just kind of further delayed the fight just a few more weeks.
Yeah, 100%. It was tough because we knew about the fight 8 weeks out. I had an idea I was going to fight on the card a little sooner, so I was getting ready to get in shape prior to that. So you have the 8-week camp, you peak, you make weight, and then obviously my body didn't have to go through the whole process of the damage that comes in a fight. And I made quick turnarounds before, but I'm not as young as I once was, and I kind of wanted to recycle that energy. I was like, I just got to build off this to the point where you just kind of almost continue to redline, almost in a way. I was back in the gym on Monday. I sparred 9 rounds. Wow. Did pads. I did everything. You know what I mean? And I knew that there was one of two options. I was either going to fight 2 weeks later in Vegas at the LFA
Mhm.
show, or I was going to fight, or I was going to end up fighting on this card in Connecticut 4 weeks after,
Mhm.
4 or 5, somewhere around there. Vegas didn't work out, luckily, because realistically, that would have been a little too quick of a turnaround.
Sure.
And, there were some names floated around. Off the bat, I was a little salty about how everything kind of went down. But, like, I understand things happen. They're out of our control. So I just kind of, him and his coach were messaging me kind of like pleading to kind of get the opportunity again. I was like, you know what?
Mm.
I said, let's run that one back. And, they've had my full attention ever since. Like we're going on like, I think this is week 13 now.
Sure. It's been about three months, pretty
Yeah.
much. 3 months. Yeah, that's a really long time for the folks at home that might not be aware of how these camps break out. You mentioned that you had a good 8-9 weeks to prepare originally, and then this fight falls apart. So it added another, 5-6 weeks here. And
Right.
as I see it, I mean, good on you first off to kind of acknowledge that, hey, I worked really hard to prepare for Kyle. Kyle worked really hard to prepare for me.
Right.
We want to get this solved, find out which one of us, moves up in the rankings and which one of us can get the win over one another. And in your case, I think that I looked at this card really closely. I was talking about it, briefly last night. The fact that this card actually was, I mean, trust me, Kyle, I would have loved to have watched you fight Seneca Niagara. I always love, the row of interviews I get the opportunity to do, and then get to go to the fights and then get to watch the guys or gals that I interview and see them in action. But I will say that this card, the structure of this card, I think for your career's sake is actually, dare I say, better for you. If
Yeah.
you're able to come off of this with a huge win over Kyle, I see multiple lightweight fights on this card that could dictate who your next opponent might be.
Right.
Is that what you kind of see when you looked at this situation?
So I'm not really looking at anybody else on the card personally. I'm looking at the platform. I think,
Mm-hmm.
I've already fought at Seneca. So like it was cool because I had nerves the first time I went through it. Everything was so calm and relaxed the second time that
Mm-hmm.
it almost didn't feel like I was getting in a fight, right? It almost felt so like apropos. And this one, so it was like I've been there, I've done it, not to sound like that, but I had.
Mm-hmm.
And this time I was having the home field crowd. Now I'm going into enemy territory since he's from New
Mm.
England. Um, and, Seneca Niagara is a great casino and a great venue,
Right.
but Foxwoods is pretty historic in and of
Sure.
itself. It probably holds about twice as many people as
Right.
Seneca. And plus, I was going to be on the prelims. I'm pretty sure I'm on the prelims. I might be moved up with some fallouts. I'm not 100% sure, but
Mm-hmm.
it's, I think there's going to be a few more eyes on this event. I think
Mm-hmm.
Aljamain Sterling's going to be there. I think Alex Pereira might be there. So there's going to
Mm-hmm.
be better, like, crowd presence as well, more
Sure.
eyes on the product. So, I just go out there and I do my thing. I go fight to the best of my abilities. I think I put myself in a very good standing. And then as far as like a future opponent, you got to fight one, you got to focus on one at a time. But,
Right.
I got a litany of people that I have in mind after this. But, wherever the hand unfolds is where I'll end up.
Yeah, and shout out, just over the years, the fight game has been extremely good to me. I've had the chance to, meet guys like yourself in person, chat with guys like yourself here on this show, and kind of mingle with some execs, get some good contacts and build some good connections. And it's so ironic that this kind of situation materialized the way that it did with you fighting at Foxwoods, because what led me to LFA, what led me to guys like Ryan Bevins and Sven Bean and Ed Soares, is Christian Printup, who is the head of events at Foxwoods. He
Oh,
went
no
from
kidding.
Seneca Niagara to Foxwoods. So
Oh, wow.
I know he's a huge supporter of mine. He's been a really big supporter of mine for quite a long time now, and I wanted to definitely give him a shout out because I know he'll circle back. If he's not watching this live, he'll listen to this and he'll get the shout out that he deserves. So shout out to Christian Printup. If you get the chance to meet him, I highly suggest it.
I'd
He's a
love
great
to.
guy, awesome guy. Puts on a really great show. Hospitality, through the roof at that place. So definitely enjoy that, and I know you will.
Absolutely. Yeah. I fought in Connecticut once before. I don't know if it's like enemy territory between Foxwoods, but I actually made my pro debut when I fought in Bellator at Mohegan Sun. So,
Mm-hmm.
they have just a great culture out there, and I'm really looking forward to dipping my toes in the Foxwood pond.
Sure, definitely, definitely. Now, as far as you mentioned you had some experience in Bellator. Right now, the kind of hierarchy in MMA is a lot different than it was when you first fought in Bellator. Bellator is no longer in existence. What's your kind of assessment as far as what LFA has been able to do in your experience with them thus far?
Oh, LFA's been great. They've been world class. Bellator was awesome, especially for my pro debut. Most people get to debut on like just a regular regional show, like no disrespect to them or anything, but
Hmm.
like NEF or like something of that nature, right? Like
Right.
whatever territory they're in, they get to debut there. And I was fortunate enough to have that at Bellator. But nowadays, people are making their pro debuts for like LFA and some PFL or whatever
Hmm.
it may be, and the opportunity is just so much greater now.
Hmm.
That tide started to shift back when I went pro about 2017, but
Hmm.
it's a lot more common now, and it's just so much more. There's so much more opportunity for fighters. LFA puts on a world class show. Like, I'm so proud to be under their banner. To
Hmm.
be honest, in my opinion, the best talent that's not signed to like the UFC isn't is in LFA. I mean, most of the
Hmm.
people that go to the UFC are in LFA.
Right.
In my opinion, I think LFA is like, you might not have Dana White sitting cage side, but it's like the Contender Series with a live crowd, in my opinion. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Sure.
Like
Yep.
any person, especially with a handful of fights, can get that call up with one great performance.
Sure, sure. I completely agree. Since my time, covering events for them at Seneca and just watching the product, it's almost as if it's only continued to get better, and it's only going to continue to get better with just the you could say grocery list or laundry list of names that have come through the organization to end up being in the UFC and winning UFC gold. Alex
Yeah,
Pereira, as you mentioned, he might be in attendance on Saturday. Aljamain Sterling. I know Henry Cejudo had a few moments with LFA, and they had the big merger with RFA, making
right.
it even bigger. So yeah, it's just been an awesome experience for everybody in the sport. The more the merrier, as far as local events and everything. We got to love the local events too, but I will say that with organizations like LFA, it's what's keeping the UFC going, especially as they've gone through kind of a transition period in star power, right?
100%. And one thing you'll see in LFA, I mean, like with most regional promotions and territorial promotions, you'll see like very lopsided matchups. You'll see
Hmm.
guys that are making their pro debut going against a killer, or guys that are just, way less than 500 fighting somebody who's undefeated. And it's necessary. It's a necessary evil of the sport. You got to build the stars somehow. But at LFA, you never see that. These are all very well, very fair matchups where it's like a pick 'em every time.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And there's no clear cut winner when you look at it on paper for fights on LFA, in my opinion.
I completely agree, and obviously, kind of going to the sentimental aspect of what gets you up in the morning. Couldn't help but notice, as we talked about the last time we talked, but now getting to know you a little bit more, talking to you a little bit on social media. How much does your wife and your lady and kids mean to you in this journey these last couple weeks? I mean, it's got to be kind of up and down emotionally for them too to see you go through this stuff too.
Oh, it's everything. It gets you up in the morning. As I told you last time, like every rep matters now. They make sure
Mhm,
every rep matters. Like anytime, like I might be, you know, getting a little complacent with my output, that goes in the back of my mind. Everything they're my world, and that's not even just an exaggeration. They're the air I breathe. Um, they're everything. So to have that in the back of my mind, like even so, I'm cross training with my buddy right now from New York City, and he went for some bullshit, like kind of going with me. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm not gonna hit that on you. You got two kids." And it's like, I mean, he's right because you might hit that on a noob or something, or you might hit that on somebody that on a tap, but. There's just a different drive with everything I do.
mhm,
And then as far as the fight, I mean, that's one thing people don't really take into consideration. Like you said, the length of camps, but also like the hardships of camps, right? Like, we're real people. People dehumanize fighters, but we've got real life stuff going on. I've got a
mhm,
2 and a 3-year-old, and they've got appointments that make you miss a session. They've got, they'll get sick, and you got to tend to the kid. But like
mhm.
at the same time, if you miss out on something, you got to really uh, be driven to kind of play catch up. Where
Sure.
as opposed to the past, you might be like, I missed it. It is what it is. I'll get it back in the next session. No, there is no getting it back. You go get it back. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
that's basically the premise of everything. Since I've had kids, since I found my wife, everything. My wife is my better half. She takes care of the business aspect for me. She takes care of the kids when I'm not home. She makes sure, like, I have a nice meal waiting for me. You know, medical stuff I
Mhm.
could do on my own. But she feels like privy to go do it herself, and it's like, without her, I'd be lost. So I'm just
Yeah.
thankful and extra motivated every time I step foot in my house.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's so funny like when you first meet somebody and then you might meet somebody that's in their circle. I said to myself, is this Kevin's wife or does she like does she work for LFA? Does she work she obviously does cuz you're with LFA like she's
She was
carrying you and
lying.
helping you throughout the journey, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny because like I've been in the game for 13 years. She's been in the game for like 2, 3 years. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And she's made way more connects than I have in that time frame. You know what I mean? Like I'm so proud of her and everything she's done in that time frame. It's just been mind-boggling, to be honest with you.
And you said that she was your in with LFA. How did that happen? How did take me through that?
So she started working for them and everything, and I had that 6.5 year layoff,
Mhm.
and you know, I not young anymore, and I
Mhm.
always was planning on fighting. She had already started working for them, and one of the first events she attended for them was in Seneca, Niagara last year.
Yep.
I was right with her, and I think we talked to Sven, and she started introducing me to him, and she's like, "This is my husband. He's a fighter. This, that, the third." And I was like, obviously, I'm like, I would love to fight for you guys. He said, I was like, I'm looking to fight in May. I think I got something lined up in New England. He said, get that done and we'll talk. So I went out there, fought for Combat Zone, and Carly, you know, got that lined up for me. Thank God, and yeah, it's just been amazing. Um, it's really like a family circle over there.
It really is.
They they have to look at me like I'm just a fighter. because at the end of the day, that's what I am to them. I'm one of the fighters. They can't really play favorites,
Right.
but like I get a bird's eye view at how they treat their staff and how they treat each other, and it's a tight knit group, and it's a beautiful thing.
Very cool how they are such a tight knit group, but it goes beyond, like, it's inside the sport and inside how they operate, but it's also how they operate with the fans. I mean, as
Oh,
far as a fan experience, I know Ed's brother was in charge of designing their merchandise and things like that. There's a lot of different family connections to Ed that are kind of working under him within the business, that I think is pretty cool. Gives it a homegrown feel that I think MMA really does miss,
yeah.
with the rise of the UFC and where the UFC has burst onto the mainstream. And talking about that, Kevin, you mentioned to me last time, and you mentioned to me today that you had that 6-year layoff, and I know fighters don't like to look ahead. I don't want you looking past anybody, but to get this win, obviously that's the goal. To get this win, what would it mean for you, moving forward? What are some goals that you have left in this sport that you want to complete before it's all said and done?
Yeah, it mean everything. Kyle and I have kind of been until we signed the contract 13 weeks ago. We kind of have been like an unspoken dogs staring across the cage at
Hmm.
each other. You know what I mean? Because we're both in the same territory. I know he's very tough. He's very game. He's very dangerous. He's unorthodox. He's got that style that one wrong move and they could be waking you up with sleep insults. So
Hmm.
to be honest, it'd mean everything, not just for the personal aspect, but like this is the path I chose. This is not the safest route to go, but this is what I've chose to do. Um, my biggest thing is I want to be able to provide for my family and give them the life that they deserve. But I
Hmm.
also want to look like a superhero to my children. And obviously, fighting or not, I will. But when
Hmm.
my kid looks at me and calls me Hulk, or when my kid sees a poster with my face on it and he starts laughing, and it's something that your regular 9 to 5 can't really itch that scratch.
No.
And my biggest goals in this sport is money, make memories, and look back on it and be happy with what it is. Because
Hmm.
that 6.5 year layoff, I could have called it. I could have called it. I fought in Bellator. Oh, I'm 1-0 pro, whatever. But I was just never content with it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I want to keep moving that goalpost. I want to get out at the right time to where I'm cognitively still okay.
Hmm.
I want to see my kids have a long, fruitful life. So when the time is right, I'll know. But right now, I think I could take it as far as I want. So,
That's
uh,
awesome.
yeah, make money, make memories, be happy with it.
I love that. I love that. And you've fought in Bellator, you've fought at, some really awesome venues over the years. What's one venue that you haven't fought at yet that you'd love to fight at? Like, what's one that you'd really love to cross off the list,
So
venue
obviously,
wise?
so obviously, every New York person wants to fight at the Garden. That'd be awesome. When I when I first got started training, I wrote like a laundry list of bucket list type stuff that I wanted to do. A lot of that fell through, but one of the things was I wanted to fight at the Saitama Arena, the Super Saitama
Mm,
Arena in Japan. I don't know how my wife feels about flying all the way to Japan, but like I think that'd be awesome. I think that'd be awesome personally. Um, I would love to fight at you know, the Blue Cross Arena out in Rochester. They
hmm.
don't really do shows there frequently. They had one UFC there, but I think that would be awesome to fight there. Um,
That's a
those
great
those are
spot.
like those are the big top three off the top of my head. But I'd love to fight in California. I'd love to fight in Hawaii. All these destinations, family vacations.
Yeah,
Wherever a
that's
nice little family vacation would be.
right. Get out of. I know that the weather's transitioning. We're going into spring, and hopefully
I'm in
summer's not too
shorts.
far off. But yeah, today was a gorgeous day. Tried to get outside as much as I could today, but and obviously I've we've talked about this before, but I definitely wanted to bring this up. The fact that you're kind of a Rochester transplant, right? Like you came over from one side, back and forth, back here and training here, kind of with Jonathan Piersma when you can, and Jonathan's coming off of an ACL injury. I've been reading that his recovery is going really well, and I've heard that from some people, yourself
Freak of
included.
nature. Freak of
Where is this guy at? Where is Jonathan at as far as when could we expect to see him back, you think?
So I won't spill the beans with exacts, but
Hmm.
we've got like exact ideas that we've talked about like as a team, but definitely the summer, in my opinion. I don't think that
Nice.
there'd be anything that's really going to stop him from returning to that cage before the end of summer. Probably,
Do you
probably, probably early summer, realistically.
Nice. And do you expect that to be with LFA more likely than not?
More unlikely. More safe bet.
I got all I needed. I got the approximate date and the organization. That was all. Those were the beans. I got you to spill the beans right here.
Yeah, I
Breaking
said I
news.
wasn't gonna say too much, but who knows? Who knows?
I appreciate you breaking the news. I'm sure Ryan is watching this right now. Ryan Bevins. He's probably saying,
Ryan's the
"Hey,
man. What's up,
Ryan's
Ryan?
the man. What's up, Ryan? What's up, buddy?" So yeah, I'm excited to see him come back. Great fighter, great guy. And I'm definitely feeling as if you get a big win here. The win that I think that you were going to get, I will say the momentum, it felt like it was the juices were flowing for you in that venue with all the people that you had there to support you, which I know will just be right there again here at Foxwoods. But a big win here over Kyle Pewfall, and you're on to the next one. 4-0, am I right? 4-0
Yeah,
with that
4-0.
win. 4-0.
Yep, 4-0.
So 4-0, ideally get that finish,
Yep.
climb that lightweight LFA ladder, and who knows, right? Anything's possible. There's no age limit, I think, in the sport, because when you go back and look at it, despite the fact that you had a 6-year layoff, some of the best stories in the sport's history are older guys, peaking late, or older guys getting to the precipice of the sport when most didn't even expect it. Guys like Glover Teixeira and Randy Couture and Daniel Cormier, to name a few. Who's to
100%.
say that? Who's to say that couldn't be you?
Yeah, the beautiful thing is like, everybody wants to kind of rush to be that fast, that next John Jones and everything, when he was the youngest world champion and everything, but everybody's path is different.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even start competing and training till I was 21. Like I'm in the gym now and I'm with 20, 21 year olds that have 10 fights already, 10
Right.
plus fights. And, you know, so I got a late start and then I had a 6.5 year gap on top of it.
Mm.
I went pro within 4 years of being an amateur, but then I had that 6.5 year gap. But the way I look at it is I got to preserve a lot of miles on my body and on my brain. So I
Yes.
kind of, if anything, I allowed the software to kind of catch up to the hardware, and I'm looking to show my full potential this coming weekend.
Now, are you a football guy, or are you more of a fight guy? Are you
No, I'm a football guy. Obviously, upstate New York. It's kind of blasphemous to say I'm not a Bills fan, but I'm not. I hate to break it to you, but I'm a Niners fan, and we've kind of gone
We've
through
talked
it.
about that. Yep.
Yeah, we've gone
Yep.
through it with the postseason, but at the same time, we're rebuilding. We're rebuilding. At first, I was
Mhm.
questioning everything, Lynch, and Shanahan were doing, but I think I see the future. We got Juice back, and that's all. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the 49ers are, pun intended, they're one of the gold standard franchises, right? They'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. But the only reason why I ask
Thanks.
is, yeah, I think they can, right? They got Brock Purdy. They'll get him locked up and
There's been
hopefully
a lot
build
of
around him a
heart.
little
There's
bit.
been a lot of heartache the past 20 years. I've been a fan of them.
That's true. That's
So
true.
I'd like to say you're right, but at the same time, it's like I don't put too much stock in it.
Couple Super Bowl
I'm ready.
appearances, but they didn't win it, right? That is
A
true.
lot of NFC championship
Hmm.
fumbles as well. And anyways, I'll let you make your point. I'm sorry.
Yeah, my point was there was a guy that I grew up watching, high school years to date myself, but he was a player that kind of came out of nowhere. Fred Jackson. Do you remember Fred Jackson?
Okay. Yeah,
You
yeah,
remember
for
Fred?
sure. Old
Yeah.
Bills running back.
Yeah, old Bills running back. So he comes in out of Coe College, which is a Ivy League D3, like D2, not even
Right.
D1. They're very, very small. And nobody comes out of Coe College and makes it to the NFL. Like he was probably one of the first. And he ends up taking Marshawn Lynch's job. And he ends up being one of the best running backs in the NFL for a series of years, probably 4 or 5 years. Then he rides off into the sunset. But his career was so short because he got a chance, to really show what he was made of kind of late because he didn't really play in college the way that other running backs would. So it's kind of an interesting, thought that I had here that some guys just peak later because they started later. Or
Yeah.
some guys, like you said, you were 21 when you first started. Um, was there any wrestling background to your game from high school or anything like that? Was there any, competitive wrestling in your background prior to starting MMA?
Well, to backtrack just a little bit, you're 100% right. That's a great call by Fred Jackson. Kind of get in, cash out quick. Get in,
Hmm.
get out with as little damage as possible. Because NFL, just like fighting, you can recruit a lot of injuries in a short period of time. So to be
Sure.
able to do that, a lot of people think that the goal is always to like be a champion, and like I think that's a nice fruit of your labor, in my opinion. Like, I
Hmm.
used to have a different mindset when I was younger. Like, if you're not
Hmm.
trying to be the best, then you're going to be a stepping stone for somebody who is, and that's true. But at
Hmm.
the same time, if you just put your best foot forward and you're a smart businessman and you're exciting and everything, I think in this sport you can go a long way. If you can talk as well, you can go a
Hmm.
long way, and you can get a good fistful of money. Uh,
Hmm.
it's smart. It's smart. But no. But to answer your question, I did not have much of a background. Like traditionally, like I boxed a little bit in high school with some buddies in downtown Rochester under Charles Murray, but it was only for like a month or two, right? Like, but and then like me and my buddies would mess around and grapple in the backyard. I'd stop in a jujitsu gym here and there. Never wrestled. Started wrestling actually after my sixth amateur fight. I got out wrestled out in New England, and the
Hmm.
gym I was training at had one of the best wrestlers to ever step foot on a mat as the wrestling coach, Gene Mills,
Oh,
and he
wow.
took he took me under his wing and he taught me how to wrestle at 22 years old or 21 years old. He taught me how to
Wow.
wrestle. Now people confuse me for a wrestler all the time.
Hmm.
And yeah, no, he's if you're aware who Gene Mills is, Gene Mills is a legend amongst men.
Yeah, that's a name that I'm a big wrestling guy. I coach. I'm getting into the coaching ranks of wrestling. I kind of
Nice.
would pop in as like an assistant at my high school, but then it really became like a passion of mine. I graduated high school 2010. Had a nice cup of coffee, as they say in wrestling.
2011.
Yeah, so I'm a year ahead. So yeah, 2010, I graduate. Didn't want anything to do with it. Kind of wanted to just distance myself from it, focus on my
Yeah.
my young adulthood. And then I went to a tournament in 2015, and I hadn't been able to just shake getting away from it since. It's like, wow,
Right.
I forgot how much I loved this and how much I need to be around it. I just, to quote Rocky in Rocky 2, I just got to be around it. You know what I mean? It just,
Yeah,
when you're
absolutely.
around it, it gets the juices flowing and just gets you feeling like you're a part of something special. So
Right.
that's, guys like Gene Mills, big staples of the sport, trained a who's who. Has been training people for a long time. That's a name that I've definitely heard of, and a name that I think most people should know. So
Oh.
if you don't, I don't know where you've been, but look up Gene Mills and you'll find out a lot.
Oh yeah, world champion, Tbilisi champion,
Yep.
among many other things. But he should be an Olympic champion. But he has a vendetta against, God rest his soul, President Carter off that one.
Yeah.
But no, he's the man. Both on the feet and on the mat. I have a very wrestling style. Gene actually. So he has like a hybrid wrestling jiu-jitsu style he calls pinjitsu, and that
Mm.
is what I kind of came up in the sport learning. A lot of
Wow.
halves, a lot of rides.
Hmm.
At first when I first started before that fight, I was like everybody else who would jump in a jiu-jitsu class and start triangling people and think that I'm some type of guard player, and then I go and get out wrestled for 3 rounds. And he said, "Fuck that!" And he started having me work his camp out in
Mm.
Pennsylvania. It's COVID shut that down since, but
Hmm.
I worked that for about 6 or 7 years. It was 2 weeks at a time.
Mm.
There'd be 2 sessions, or no, 4 sessions a day, 2 hours apiece, and you're doing that 7 days a week. And
Wow.
when I first did it, he didn't let me do any jujitsu off my back. He hardly let me do any jujitsu. I was striking and I was wrestling for 6 months, and then,
Wow.
needless to say, I got a lot better at wrestling. And
It's I believe it was Michael Chandler. He said something to the tune of he was a wrestler at Mizzou and he said he wished that he had boxed first and then wrestled.
yeah,
Because then just the way he was able to build himself up, there's a lot of guys that he was around, guys like Tyron Woodley, and he would say like Tyron already had a striking base and then he added the wrestling base. I wish I had had the opposite, just in terms of like learning both disciplines, maybe a little bit of wear and tear on the joints, on the
oh, big
muscles
time.
and stuff from wrestling, whereas opposed to boxing, if you're sparring too much, that could get in the way. But if you're just training like drills and such,
Right.
you're not taking those hits to the chin, right?
Yeah,
Or to the
100%.
head.
Yeah, wrestling. I started getting all my knee injuries and stuff from wrestling. I had
Hmm.
ACL surgery back in 2018, and that probably came from wrestling early on or later on in life. But at the same time, now I'm good to go. Now I'm good to go. But
Yeah.
it definitely took a while for my body to get used to that type of grind because it's a whole
Hmm.
different. Jiu-jitsu, you can rest in positions. There's no
Hmm.
resting in wrestling. You know what I mean?
It's so
Especially,
funny.
yeah,
You, it's so
torquing of
funny
the
you say
limbs
that.
and everything, and the hips, and not even just the limbs, because it's
Hmm.
like you're not just going from the ankle to the hip. You're starting to contort the knee joints, and you know what I
Sure.
mean. It's a lot of wear and tear in a short period of time, and I honestly think, and a lot of people think this, wrestling is by far harder than MMA. MMA, you
Mm.
can coast. There's positions where you can rest, you could settle. Wrestling, I think, is the hardest sport in the world.
I
100%.
agree. I agree. That's why I was so, at seventh, eighth grade, ninth grade, I was so attracted to it because I'd never seen anything like it before, after, or since. And I think that's why it's been so highly regarded as the foundational base sport for MMA. Joe Rogan said it. Take any fighter. What's the first discipline you'd want them to build a base off of? It's wrestling. All the great fighters in mixed martial arts, they were wrestlers first.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence. So yeah, it's really really awesome to kind of go down the pathway of wrestling and provide a glimpse too to the kids that tune into this, that I've coached, and to the coaches that I've coached with, how important that sport is for not just guys or girls that want to go into MMA, but just for building character,
Yeah, life.
building life discipline, all the above, mental toughness, you name it. I couldn't
100%.
I couldn't even begin to stop the what the sport provides.
Oh yeah, so when I first started training, Gene taught me how to wrestle, but it was also Tim Boda. Tim Boda and Gene were
Mm,
like almost good cop, bad cop, and Tim wasn't quite as he didn't have as many accolades or the name value Gene did, but they were like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And Boda, he owned the gym I was training at, Ultimate Athletics Syracuse, but he also owned a truck and trailer repair company, and he would just hire old wrestlers to work for him because they would have the best work ethic. You know what I mean? And it's
mhm.
stuff that just cannot be taught. I hope my children decide to want to do. I don't want to be that parent that forces their child to do anything,
Right.
but I'm definitely going to push them in that direction to because I
Mhm.
want to see what they're made of. Not for nothing,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and I think too, that's a really good talking point too. That when I got into it because my dad wrestled. I wanted to wrestle because my dad wrestled, but my dad wasn't somebody that was gonna say, "You better do this sport." He was just saying, "Hey, here's something that I did. This sport did this for me. Maybe you should give it a shot." Football is not really going as great for you as it was when you were in seventh and eighth grade. You're starting
Right.
to get a little banged up here. Let's go to something else. Let's turn a new leaf, and do something a little bit challenging that you've never done.
Yeah.
Wrestling, enter wrestling, I will always cherish my time in that sport, as a competitor,
So
but I think even more so now, to be honest with you.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah. No. Now you're a light for the children. Now you're coaching, that's huge. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
and it
You're a role model and that stuff can't be taken away.
I appreciate that, dude. I really do. Well,
Absolutely.
Kevin, give the fight fans, your best case scenario of how this fight goes down. Most fighters say, I'm going to knock him out in the first 5 seconds. I'm going to, throw a flying knee like Jorge Masvidal. That's the best case scenario, right? You get in, get out. But just based on the experience that you've been through with this fight being, rebooked and changed and scheduled, what do you want to prove? What do you want to do in this fight? What do you want the fight fans to see from this performance this Saturday night?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't trying to gather as quick as possible. Um,
Hmm.
that's the ideal case. That's the ideal case. In and out. We're
Hmm.
not paid by the hour. I want
Right.
something. In an ideal world, it's quick and it's a highlight. I don't care what it is, submission or knockout. But that being said, I've hung my hat on that a few too many times the past few fights where I don't think I fought to my true potential. I
Hmm.
think I've been like I gotta knock this person out or I gotta submit them. I'm just gonna go out there and fight. I think my style kind of speaks for itself. I think I kind of have just a very fan friendly style. I'm unorthodox and technical at the same time. Um, I'm a finisher, whether it's on the feet or on the floor. I think the longer I go, I think the more I can show what I have to offer. But my best case scenario is I get in, get out unscathed with 2 paychecks and maybe a performance bonus.
Very
Best case
nice.
scenario for me.
The show bonus, the win bonus, and the performance bonus. Did I get that
Yeah.
right?
Not fight of the night. I'm good on a fight of the night. I'm cool on a performance of the night bonus.
Nice. Yes. That's the one that you want. The Justin Gaethje's of the world. They've had a lot of fight of the night bonuses, but they've had some wear and tear to add on to it. But I'm sure he likes the dollars and cents in his bank account either way.
Those that fills up the bank account quick. But I also, you get one brain and that doesn't really come back. So I'm trying to make sure, like I said, I'm there for my kids' kids at this point.
Hmm. Awesome stuff, dude. Awesome. Well, of course, say hi to the family for me.
Absolutely.
And definitely thank you for hopping on once again, Kevin. I'm glad we can make this
Pleasure.
happen. Of course, I do hold out hope that not only will you win, but you'll also get the chance to come back to Seneca and fight. I'm supposed to be doing a little bit of a traveling circuit with LFA here.
No kidding. That's awesome.
I'm gonna talk to Ryan about a few things, see what we can iron out.
Yeah.
Throughout the year, and see if I can make this take this on the road, take the Thomas Take Sports podcast on the road a little bit, and go to some away sites to watch some fights. Oh, I think we might have lost him. Is he still with us? Oh, we might have lost him. Well, of course, Kevin Carrier joining us on. Oh, he's back. I think he's back. Yeah, Kevin Carrier and I were talking. You back, buddy? All right. Catch you later. All right. So yeah, Kevin back on the Thomas Take Sports podcast. As I sent him the au revoir there, we had a little bit of technical difficulty right towards the end, but we were already, sending him our well wishes. I'm going to take the takeover tour to hopefully one of these LFA events that is on the road for me, going from West New York to wherever it may be. I would have loved to have been to this Foxwoods event. Couldn't make it out, but that's a little bit of a hike for me. But I will love to take in an LFA event at a new or different venue. That's one of my goals this year. I love to support this brand, Legacy Fighting Alliance. They've been great to me, and they have provided a great experience for not just myself, but the plus one, the lady, as well as fight fans. And we talked about it. Kevin and I talked about it. What LFA is doing in the sport of mixed martial arts, very few organizations have had the high success rate that LFA has had. We were having some technical difficulties. Kevin was getting a call from the boss man, Ed Soares. And Ed Soares was calling, and he was, he had to take that call. Got to take the call when the boss is calling. So, no problem at all, Kevin, on that. Got to take the call when the boss is calling. I completely get it. So, thank you so much for tuning in to this special edition of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas. Enjoy the fights Saturday night, LFA 204 live on UFC Fight Pass. And if there's some tickets still available, which I doubt there is, but if there is, go online, check out the Foxwoods Resort Event and Casino Center in Connecticut. And I think you'll be at a great venue to watch some great fights. Enjoy the fights. Keep punching.